Hello, Jess. How are you?
Hello.
So, this is Yizz the Eunuch. I've been on her podcast twice now, and she's a good friend of mine. And, Jess, for the audience, could you tell me who you are?
Well, that's a lot of things to answer. I'm an American. I'm of European descent. I am a bit of an activist, a bit of an entertainer, and I do my best to be a truth teller above everything else. About 10 years ago, I'm 40 years old, by the way. About 10 years ago, I started realizing that almost everything that I based my life on and knew about the world and others was a lie. And it started me down the path that took me to where I am today. So, a short answer to your question is yes, I am technically a eunuch. I think that technically, if you wanted to be a jerk about it, you could put me in the transgender bucket, but I hate the trans lobby and what they stand for. So, I don't identify as such a thing. But I can go into more of that later if you want.
We,
But I have a lot of different experiences from different buckets of people going through my life. And I think I have a unique standpoint from which to talk about the values of morals, ethics, nationalism versus globalism, economics, that kind of thing, from sort of a I just stumbled through it all and I have lived experiences layman point of view, not an academic or well read point of view. So that's sort of the encompassing uh, amalgamation of what Yizz the Eunuch has become and what the last 2 years of my content on my channel has been about.
so, what do you do, if I may say?
What do I do as in my everyday life, not my
No, no,
content?
no. You do political activism, yes, but what is it you do with it? I know you do YouTube because I've been to two of your podcasts.
The activism that I do locally recently has been campaigning at my local church, talking to people at schools, especially the big lefty university nearby here, because I live in a very rural place where it might as well be 1940 for a lot of people around here still, which I like. That's good. That's one of the reasons I moved back here. But we do have a larger city, larger for here. It's only like I think 60 or 70,000 people. It's still pretty small for a city, but they have a rather large state university here, and it has, like most universities, been partially overran by whatever you want to call our enemies, the people who want to put destructive ideas about religion and faith and family and country and government into people's heads. You want to call them Marxists or whatever. You know that recently I started using a lot of Jason Kuna's Go Free lexicon. So what I'm talking about is the anti-Western or anti-white narrative stuff.
And who may
Marxism,
this
communism,
Jason
globalism.
Kuna be? Who is this person? For the audience, who is this
Oh,
person?
Jason Kuna is a white, um, well, he's a white well-being advocate and activist, and he's an author. And he leads a community and a content cluster, YouTube, D Live, that kind of thing, where he points out the what he calls the anti-white narrative, which is the encroaching zeitgeist that wants to disempower, pick apart, and destroy Western civilization. And calling it anti-white is a mix of a simplified version of things, because white is basically synonymous with European, and saying white is a very racially charged word these days, and it's a very good tool for snappily saying exactly what you're talking about and getting people's back brain to know what you're getting at. So when I say anti-white narrative, I get it from Jason Kuna because I've learned a lot about his lexicon and dialectics for talking about the amalgamation of enemies that we have here in the West, whether it be a Marxist professor or some Antifa puke on the street or organized black bloc in France, something like that. We have a lot of elements from rich people to poor people,
Yeah.
from the street to universities, that hate Western kind and hate our values and our way of life that we've cultivated for the last several hundred years. And they are our enemies. And calling them anti-white or anti-Western is just an easy tag to where when you say it, people would get the gist of what you're talking about. So my my lexicon that I use is very heavily borrowed from this man and his book called Go Free, which talks about taking your mind and going free of the the mind poison, which he calls meme pathogens, that are the anti-Western, anti-white thought cancer that gets put into us by educators in movies and TV and stuff.
So when did you hear about this person?
I picked him up about 8 months ago, maybe 7 months ago, and I learned of his book and I got it. And it's easy for even someone like me to read. And I say that not because I'm stupid, but because I have ADHD and another mental problem I don't take medication for. So it's very hard for me to read. But I muscled through it. I got through the book. I keep it on my nightstand as a reference book. It's easy to read because it's more like a mix of a textbook and a self-help book. It's not like a novel. So it's easier for me to read because it's nicely bullet pointed and organized out into different sections to help someone like me better categorize and talk about the actions and the people and the thoughts that specifically are to destroy and weaken Western kind. And I really like his book for that, because about 2 years before I even knew he existed, I was already coming to some of these terms and thoughts on my own. But he's been at this for 20 years, so his lexicon and the way he's got everything laid out is just so much better than everything I'd come up with so far.
So I'm guessing, in a way, you used his words without knowing him.
Well, I mean, sort of. I was already talking about white guilt. I was already talking about how it seems that there's some connection between the different groups of things like intersectional feminism. Why is intersectional feminism and then Antifa and then communist stuff all seemingly being wielded by rich people that all these groups should hate because they talk about, the evil white man and the super capitalist and all that. How are they all connected? Why is it all connected? It's because they are all in service to doing harm to Western kind and Western civilization. And that's sort of what led me to his cluster and using his lexicon.
But you deem, it's interesting how you view sort of the enemy, but you view them, you say the rich a lot. Mm-hmm. The rich and powerful.
Rich is not necessarily a bad thing, but I do believe that there's a lot of value in breaking patriotism, national sovereignty. There's a lot of value in destroying the backbone of the West, small businesses, church, religion, family. If you are someone who heartlessly cares only about profit and money on the big end, and you only want people to be consumer units that are easy to shuffle around on the same global capitalist chessboard or whatever. So it's not that I dislike money or wealth or capitalism. I tell people oftentimes I'm an ANCAP at heart. I can't help it. Like that's where my heart lies. But like a lot of people that are dreamers, you got to realize that reality has a huge chasm to go before the things you dream about could ever become real. So that's what led me to being a mix of a conservative, a nationalist, a racial identitarian, and an advocate along race and ethnicity, because I think that is where we have to rally to save Western kind. Then we can go back to arguing about economic structures and whatever else might come next. But if white people themselves are deracinated and eliminated to a point to where we can't have any control over the lands that we occupy, Western civilization comes from Western people. And if this mass migration, super globalist juggernaut continues to roll like it is, well, we're going to be gone and cast to the winds. And then it's going to be like the Native American tribes of North America. After America Americanized them, that's what's going to happen to us in our countries. We're just going to be dispersed, and that'll be the end. So that's what led me to finding allies and talking points from people who are nationalist and racial identitarians, ethno-nationalists, ethnocentric nationalists, that kind of cluster.
You stated that sort of it's not about geopolitics or politics in and of itself. That can come later. But you see now a sort of an existential threat.
Yes.
That goes beyond normal political discussion.
Yes.
So I'm guessing then your end goal in your political activism would then be to move past this threat, to have a society which doesn't have this threat level anymore.
Yes. I could elaborate on, if you want to really pick my brain and know what Yizz wants, I could tell you multiple stages of end goals, if you would like me to pontificate. Sure. For a short-term ideal end goal, it would be to end the anti-white sentiment and the anti-Western cancer that has been infecting us for God knows how many generations, at least 2. I would like to live, and I would like to live to see a West that is not plagued by whatever you want to call them, anti-white, Marxist, intersectionals, globalists, whatever you want to call them. I don't care. I'm not this person that wants to try to blame everything on the magic tribe of Israel. I don't try to blame everything on the commies, because I think the world is far more complicated than just one group being the main cancer. I think that we have a growing mix of Sovietism and religious and capitalist split, like id and ego. You've heard the shadow is your negative self that will plague you and pull you back. I think that Western kind, whether it is 100% purposeful and manipulative or not, we have a powerful shadow living in us right now that wants to decay the family. It wants to degenerate our race. It wants to make us all wage slaves. It wants to destroy small business. It wants to do a bunch of other things. And calling it the anti-whites or the anti-Western narrative, calling it the global elite, it's difficult to put a label on all this stuff. That's why I like Jason's lexicon of calling it all anti-white. Call it what it is. It's against us and our way of life that we've cultivated for hundreds of years. So I want to live to see that mind cancer, that thought plague, that spiritual shadow exorcised from our society. I'm not saying that I'm never going to be happy unless we have a pure white ethno-state. I think that's untenable, first of all. Yeah. And I think the steps you'd have to go through to get that are, you're probably going to stumble into things I would consider highly unethical to get that. So I'm not for that. But I want us to be allowed, as Western kind, to be ethnocentric, to care about our own race, our own people, the way that humans naturally do. You look at the Asians. Asian is a race, Japanese is an ethnicity. The Asian people of Japan are Japanese. They self-select, they prioritize their laws, their economy, their business, their religion, their faith, everything around their people, which are Japanese Asians. I think that Europeans should be no different. And I don't remember, I think it was, I believe it was the Dalai Lama that recently said Europe is for the Europeans, this mass migration should stop, something like that. Like, I don't wish any harm to other people. And I most certainly, like most ethno-nationalists these days, I'd like to point out, I am not a white supremacist. I don't believe in a supremacy of one race or one culture over another. Humanity is just different. And I believe that one of the primary lies of the shadow plague or the cancer in us in the West is this concept that all people and all civilizations are equal. I think that that is a purposeful lie told to us by people who want to break us and scatter us and get us to ethically, willingly invite people that either hate us or are jealous of us into our homelands and give them our society. And I want that to end. I think that's horrible. I don't want that to happen to anybody. I don't want to reverse it. I don't want to try to make the whole world white or anything crazy like that. That's not what I'm after either. I want peaceful ethno-nationalism with an ethnocentric focus on trade, school, religion, and all that stuff, because that is the only thing that we have seen lead to healthy, stable city-states, states, governments, that kind of thing, is when a people align to one archetype and they focus on that. Because every time we've seen multiculturalism come to a head, I mean, look at London, right? Look at New York City. It's not going to work. It creates conflict and problems because people are different. So another lie, go ahead.
So I'm guessing it's not, well, yes, it's about people who are attacking white, but it's also about other groups also having the same right for their own tribe of sorts. Mm-hmm. As you mentioned, Asians. Yes, Japanese should have the right to have, the sunshine land without intervention or other groups coming in and destroying that. Same goes for any other group, I'm guessing. So,
and one thing that I'd like to talk about when it comes to the boogeyman word in the West of ethnocentrism or ethno-nationalism, what people need to understand is the reason that we must say that is because even the concept of patriotism and nationalism has been subverted. So you have civic nationalism. You have people saying, oh, well, if you're a real American patriot, you shouldn't see color. Everybody's the same. No, that's a damn lie, and you know it. And so even the concept of nationality is starting to be subverted. And that's why I think we're seeing all across the West an upsurge or an uptick. That's the word. An uptick in the frequency at which nationalist or ethnocentric groups are starting to form is because people are starting to realize this. They're starting to realize that they are being replaced, and they never asked for this. Governments and multinational corporations are doing it to their countries, and they were never asked. They never took a referendum. It was never on a ballot.
Yeah.
That all this stuff is happening. And I think people are getting really mad, and they're realizing their countries, their cities are literally being taken from them, and they are being kicked out. Their children's future is being denied for immigrants' children. And that's really ugly, no matter what the color is, no matter what the race is. That's wrong, and it shouldn't happen.
Indeed.
So
Indeed.
the reason that I don't...
And the problem is, as you say, they never asked.
Yes. They were never asked. It's not something that people of the West agreed to. Like if, let's say one of the 50 states in America, let's use Hawaii for an example, since it has a lot of travel, a lot of tourism, a lot of non-white, non-European people there. Let's say that as a state, they took a referendum and 77% of the people said, we want to make migration, integration, miscegenation, and multiculturalism, we want to govern around these things and make our business around these things. And the people there wanted to do that. I have no problem with that. That's what people wanted to do. And then they deal with the fallout of that. But that's not what happened in any country or any state in the West. That has not happened.
You picked Hawaii of all places. The Hawaiians doesn't want the Americans there. Because
and that's fine.
Hawaii is a militarized zone, more or less. They capture it by force. So again, they didn't even ask the Hawaiian people,
right,
is this what you want? Because they would say, no, we want to rule ourselves, as we've done before, when we were a kingdom. I think they were a kingdom. Well,
and again, I'm not saying that white Europeans are native to North America. I know we're not. But what I'm saying is, we have lived here for hundreds of years now. There's no way that all of us can just pull up anchor and go back to Europe. That's not going to happen. So I include America and Australia and New Zealand and South Africa when I say the West. I'm not just talking about Europe. I'm talking about where Europeans have civilized and where Western civilization occurs. That's what I mean when I say the West.
So if I guess, want to ask, so if you get your policies through, so it's not so much anti-white and self-reliance and self-control of sorts is there for people, would you then allow Native Americans to have more self-control, self-governance? Because that's usually an issue when it comes to the white question in America. It's like, yes, you should allow the whites to have sort of monocultural areas in America because, New England and the rest. But you should do the same to Native Americans, because
Native Americans already have that in America. They already have their reservation land.
Yeah, but I don't know how well the reservations are doing, of course. But let's say they give them more self-government power, more control over their own communities, and that's coming also in Canada has the same issue, and Mexico has the same issue with how to deal with the natives. Meaning, should you give them more control or not? Sweden has the same issue, by the way. We have a native population in Sweden. We're natives, but we're not the original natives because we are Indo-European. We come here with our chariots up to Scandinavia. But before that, there were sort of Inuit people, or Siberian people. I don't know exactly what they call again, the group of native European that's on glacier area up top, which we call Sami. And we had the same fight as Native Americans have. Like, how much self-control are they allowed to have? We have given them their own little self-ruling of sorts, but nothing comes from it. They can't overpower the government. If the Swedish population tells them to leave an area or to not mess with our mining, and we have a lot of iron mines up there, they can't do anything about it. They're fucked in both judge, if they go to court, they're fucked there, and they're fucked in policies. So should we give them more power to have it sort of if if you care
That's
about self-ruling.
that is outside my purview, and I don't know how to answer that. I'm sorry. I am concerned about Western kind, European people, and ending the plague against us, ending the anti-whiteism against us. I can't pontificate on the different tribes of Africa or the tribes of Native Americans that live here on reservations. I'm not concerned with them. I'm concerned with us. And I don't want them to suffer, but I haven't put any thought towards how to cultivate them or give them things in the future, because we are still probably generations away from anything that I would consider a victory with all that we have ahead of us. So if you recall earlier in the conversation, I said I could give you different stages of desired end goals for my thoughts. I didn't even get to the first one, really.
No, sorry.
That's okay. This is a fun conversation. If you would, humor me for just a minute. Let me wrap this up and then tell the next two, because they'll be shorter.
Okay.
If somehow we can, at least in some areas of the West, end mass migration, break the chains of anti-white lies in media and schools and universities, and reclaim a large part of the West, really reclaim it, make it completely for us, I think that we can have a better shot at some kind of, I don't know, I hate to say world peace, but like ending this awful U.S.-Israel hegemony, endless war starting crap. Like, I hate that stuff. Like, it really seems like unless we can find some way to diffuse this ugly entanglement that Western kind has with not just the Middle East, but currying resource war favors around the world to, because I'm sure you know about, CIA and America and Israel. There's weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. Did you know that? Well, we better go do something about it, huh? Like, and then the media is like, oh yeah, did you know there's weapons of mass destruction in Iraq? Boy, we really should go do something about that. And then when there's not any, the Patriot Act comes out. The people that say boo about that and try to expose it, well, their accounts get missing. People lose their jobs, lose their bank accounts. Like this depersoning that's happening now, it's not a new phenomenon. It's just people know about it because of how the internet and social media has grown. The governments have depersoned people for a long time. And I think that if we can get to a point to where we have an ethnocentric West that doesn't care about currying war for a war machine, that doesn't care about having to fight against our own kind in our own country, that is a desired end goal for me in the foreseeable future, maybe in a couple of generations, if we can get that somehow. Now, the next end goal, which of course I won't be alive for unless something crazy or magical happens, would be ethnocentric focus brings an end to war as technology ramps up, and we get to a place where we might have something like cold fusion. We might have a way to synthesize some unknown protein that helps feed everyone in the world while also not creating massive amounts of methane waste or whatever. So maybe, just maybe, if we can avoid disastrous world war and global homogenization to destroy ethnicities enough, then hopefully we can get to a point to where we can have some kind of massive ramp up in technology to allow our people to escape this rock and go elsewhere. And then I don't really care much about what happens to Earth. It would be sad to lose it, but if we can actually start colonizing and building other worlds, that is a wonderful end goal for me. That's the second end goal. The third end goal is, maybe inspired by too much DMT, but the third end goal would be for our people to eventually do some sci-fi shit, do some real weird sci-fi stuff where we can technologically or spiritually evolve into some kind of, I don't know, whatever type of being comes next, and truly explore the cosmos. And just like our ancestors love to go out and explore all of this world, I fantasize about people of us thousands or millions of years from now evolving psionic powers or creating technology that lets us do that across trillions of stars and worlds to the edge of the universe. I think that would be awesome. So that's kind of my third make-believe, maybe not so unfeasible in the long term, in the goal that I would like for our people. But that's just something fun to think about.
Yeah, that's a joke. So your end goal is to put DMT in the water supply so everybody gets high and dream about this.
Yeah, that would be fun.
No, jeez. No, no, of course. I mean, the point of humanity is always to reach the stars. You know,
I would love that. Yeah.
yeah, that's kind of how you beat the antinatalist arguments when people say life is
Hmm.
meaningless, just don't have kids. It's like, well, yeah, I get you, but I want humanity to be better, to improve, to reach the stars. So
Hmm.
I get you on that point.
And one of the reasons that I have become a what's the best way to put it? I am an advocate for white well-being, but I also am a bit of a Western chauvinist because when I look at the last 200 years and I see the technological, sociological, and trade growth that has come from Western civilization, it has changed everything, and it has basically ended poverty. It has dramatically ended slavery. It has dramatically improved everything about life on planet Earth, and it's largely because of European people. And I would hate to see us as a people be deracinated and eventually destroyed and cast to the winds. I just think that would be a very tragic thing, and it would be terrible for the sentient beings of planet Earth.
And you don't believe another group could eventually reach the same level?
Oh, I think that it's possible, but it just wouldn't be Western civilization, and it wouldn't be what we have now. Because Asia has lots of advanced civilization. There's civilization in India that goes back, I think, 7,000 years, maybe 6,000, I don't remember. There are, of course, non-European, non-white places that have ancient civilization and have gone through many different steps of civilization. And I'm not saying that it's completely impossible if white people are gone for us to ever reach the stars. It just, we are such a beautiful expression and a beautiful part of sentient life and the evolution, the sociological, technological evolution of this planet. I would hate for us to go extinct and disappear. I think that would just be, it would just be sad to be a tragedy. And I bet a lot of non-white people would agree with that too. I'm just guessing.
Yeah, they do. Some do. It's still interesting that how do one reach this? Like, how does one actually reach to remove sort of the anti-white policies that are
Oh, I
existing?
have lots of ideas about that.
All right.
I think I think that one thing that we must do is we have to, the reason the activism I do is important is because a change has to come from people culturally. We don't have any power in government and institutions to enact any of this. That's not going to happen for a very long time. Excuse me. I think what we have to do is start local community, families, pulling children out of schools, teaching people the truth of things, cultivating a real ethnic racial unity in different clusters all throughout the West. We have to start on the ground, breaking the chains and ending the lies of white guilt. And furthermore, we need to preach the idea that we are Western kind. And whatever form that takes, you could be an Italian, you could be a Swede, you could be from Scotland, but you're still racially a European. And through that, we have some kind of connection. We are part of Western civilization. And I think that people need to realize that's not just a piece of history, that's spiritually and mentally and genetically part of you. And you should embrace that and nurture that. Just like how a muscle that you don't exercise atrophies. I think spiritually and mentally, we have let our racial, ethnic, and spiritual identity as Western kind atrophy for many reasons. Progressivism reasons, atheism reasons, hedonism reasons, all these reasons that have sort of stripped a serious moral, ethical, spiritual sense of identity out of us as people. I think we need to start enkindling that again and building that up again. And I think that you do that on the local level. Like, that's not something that you can enforce with policy.
But aren't you worried? So let's hypothetically speak that you get some of your narratives in, which is good and all. You would want Germans to be with the Germans, Swedes to be with Swedes, Italians to be with Italians, right? You don't.
Say that again. I would want what with what? I
You
couldn't
want
understand.
groups, sort of Swedes, Germans, Italians, to be with their own and not intermingled, right?
I mean, if they want to, that's fine. I don't think that it is unethical for a German to marry a Swede or whatever. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that we need to teach our children and the people in our society to be prideful, connected, happy, together, unified in what we are. Other peoples are like that on Earth. Whites have been losing that for generations. That's why we are losing globally. We are being broken to be replaced. White erasure. That is the goal of whatever this clustered zeitgeist is that wants to break us and strip us of meaning, strip us of what we are as Western kind. And I think that the way you fight that is with strong nationalism, patriotism, having pride and unity in your race and your ethnicity, language, and your cultural history, and teaching the people around you, your children, that it is good to have meaning and fulfillment in those things, and to propagate that, to be proud of it going forward, because if you're not, you're going to be replaced by people who are unified along those lines and who do have a passion to push that into the future because they believe in it. And I think that's what most of Western kind have lost in the last 2 or 3 generations.
Yeah, but the concern is saying, whites, I mean, Europeans, who are intelligent, they don't really like the word white people. It's an American concept.
Okay. I say it because it's shorthand and easy just for the word European.
Well, yeah. Well, again, Europeans don't like to everyone. Yeah, well, they like the word European, of course, but they don't like to be united with the rest of the Europeans in sort of cultural.
Well, for sake of this conversation, you can replace my usage of the word white with European people, and it will change nothing.
No, I know. I'm trying to provoke and try to get you to see things. I'm trying to jacket you. I don't want to just be a doll that goes like, because that's boring. That's boring.
Criticize,
that's boring.
Jack, however you want, please.
So
please. It'll help me think better.
But again, let's say your policies goes through. Wouldn't you be worried of sort of chauvinism in Europe? Because we have a lot of wars and we had a lot of conflicts because of European chauvinism. Germans decided that all of Europe belongs to Germany. Same with the Holy Roman Empire, with Napoleon, the rest. But we don't like each other. We never really, Europe has never been united with one ruler ever, and that's kind of how it's built up to be.
When I talk about ethnocentric nationalism, I'm not saying that we should create a race-based Soviet empire or a ethnicity-based European Union and unify us all under one government. I think that's ludicrous and will never happen. Well, when I talk about ethno-nationalism or ethnocentrism, I mean each country, each group needs to be that way. I'm fine with Germans being in Germany. I'm fine with Sweden still being Sweden. I don't want to break down country barriers and unify us all like the National Socialists of Germany in the 30s did. That's not what I'm talking about. I mean that as peoples in our white or European-based countries, we need to enkindle a passion and a unity in simply what we are that all other groups still have that we have been stripped of. And I think that will start. That is the curative contagion that we need to spread to our people, is to end white guilt, start young, break the globalist and anti-white lies about all the stuff that makes us want to self-destruct, and try to end this endemic spiritual cancer that makes people want to teach our kids when they're 6 years old that they're trans, that wants to teach people that it's okay to get abortions or even celebrate it, that teaches people that, oh no, it's okay, everybody's the same, race doesn't matter, bring them on in, that's fine, mass migration is just fine, got to lower those wages. Like, all of that stuff needs to end, and we don't have the governmental power or the military power to end that. The only way we can fight it at this point is from the ground up, and I think that the best way to do that is with what I do, to teach my people to care about their people enough and their children and their local communities enough to start talking about the stuff I talk about and hopefully have a chance at a future for our people.
So, I just want to go into Richard Spence a tiny bit here. He stated, you know what I stand for, what I defend, the propertarianism. ideas.
Sort of.
His criticism of us was, well, laws won't change the world. We need a white awakening.
Well, laws change things. I think a common mistake people make is politics is downstream from culture. I don't think that's true. I think it works both ways.
Yeah, it does.
I think that an authoritarian structure, which any state is that, especially the monstrosities we have today, they are very authoritarian. They will enact things at the top level, and then it will be enforced, and then culture changes around it.
So,
and that's a big part of the whole slippery slope thing that conservatives complain about.
to give you a story of how that works, and it's true, it's both ways. It goes both ways. Swedish government made it into law that if you smoke and you throw your little cigarette butt on the ground, it's 800 Swedish crowns fine if you do that, because that's littering or loitering. And,
I bet that stopped that in a hurry, didn't it?
No, it didn't. Well, it did.
Really?
It did. No, it did. So the one who made the policies got interviewed and was asked the question. So, we have so much problems in Sweden. Why should the police care if you throw a cigarette butt? Says, well, they don't care. We're not expecting people like the police actually to intervene in this, but if we make it into a law, it will become sort of a culture.
Mm-hmm.
Because if something is, on paper illegal, it will stop people from doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes little by little, but it will stop them. Sure, some are rebels and will continue throwing it.
Yeah, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. A good example of that not working is prohibition in America,
Yes.
where they tried to outlaw alcohol. That didn't work.
But that's also
People
too
wanted
big.
booze.
That's too big.
It was so big, and also in America, lots of impossible to patrol area where people could make booze illegally, and so that failed. So again, I don't think anything about this culture versus politics making change. It's not 100% one way or the other, but both are possible, and we have plenty of examples where both have also failed too. So that's why I think that the thing that I can do, that I take fulfillment and derive pathos from, is knowing that at least I've done something to try to help my people have a future.
No, that I fully get.
I love ANCAP stuff. I like anarcho-syndicalism. I like proprietarianism. All the academic. Let's create our own stuff. Let's go our own way. I love starships and the idea of settling my own planet. So of course that stuff appeals to me. I love all that stuff. But the reason I moved away from that camp of ideas is because I see them as a dead-end path from where we are right now. I don't think that it's worth my time or efforts to try to invest my time or money into a particular syndicate or co-op or whatever when there are such global powers that want us to be broken and erased. I feel like my efforts would be in vain unless I specifically work against that. And that's why I do what I do. I hope that I can spread the mental, spiritual stuff that our people are going to need to raise a generation of people and create societies that will survive and push back against this narrative and hopefully one day flourish again and actually be in control of our own destinies for a change.
I mean, I understand you, but there's an issue with that logic. So, I get you. I mean, you don't always want to be under a banner. You want to help your own way. That I fully understand. But sometimes you need... Well, I mean... the guy you mentioned, the white guilt guy, yes, he have created a language, which is good. At least that is something to work upon. Mm-hmm. But let's say you didn't have the language, and you did activism. You did. The issue is you will fall flat. Because if you don't teach a language to the people you are trying to convey or you want to define it as, then once they have the rally spirit, nothing will come from it because there's no language they can use. So the way I view proprietarianism is a way it's we have a few good concepts, but it's a language, it's a tool we can give people. So if people want to rally, for example, under our banner, which I don't like rallies in the first place, but let's say they do, at least now they have an other set of tools they can use, so they can teach that to other people, and through that we can learn. But if you do I'm going to shit on Spencer a lot, but I don't like Spencer.
I don't care for him either. I think I wouldn't trust him as far as I can throw him. I think he's a disingenuous snake that doesn't really care about our people.
Definitely. I'm probably going to talk to him one day. It's going to be interesting, but definitely.
I always worry I'm going to lose followers or have somebody yell at me for not liking Spencer. It hasn't happened yet, so maybe he's not very well liked.
I mean, he's not very well liked. He's been a Whoopi Goldberg show. It's like, come on.
I think the main thing that I don't like about Spencer is he believes that things will be okay if we just take control of the state as it is now. And I'm like, that's not an answer. It'll be just as shitty if you take control of it as it is now.
100%. But the issue with him and his two little rallies, they didn't have any sort of instrument to work upon. It was just a lot of screaming. You know, what the hell did they say? That, well, United Right and Charlottesville. They said a lot of things, but they didn't say anything you can use. It's like after the rally, it's like, okay, what now? What can I now do? Someone who's interested.
So that's what you're asking me is the now what question, or what comes.
No. I'm just pointing out that. I mean, I stated you actually have a language now that is created by a white guild. I don't know white guild. That's good. That's something, that's an instrument you can work upon. Now, I don't fully agree with the instrument, but that doesn't matter. It's an instrument,
sure,
at least, so it's something. The issue Spencer did, for example, and the trap we shouldn't fall in, is if you don't have an instrument, the now what question comes along, and then it just falls out flat. And a lot of rallies that do that makes the same mistake. So there was we're following the South Africans quite a lot. There was a rally in South Africa about white farmers, like the killing of white farmers. Against it. It's like, oh yeah, okay, now you have a few hundred people going, okay, good, now it's over. All right, so the only thing you did, you felt good about yourself, you rallied, and more people are dying. Congratulations. Your rally killed people. It didn't save people, it killed people. It didn't create awareness, it just killed people. Because you have no instrument, you have no goal more than, I want to save. Yeah, I want to save. It's not an instrument. That's a pathos, that's an emotional thing that makes you feel good. Or feel bad sometimes, that's also a circle jerk, but it's not a solution. If activism or rally, as you do as well, is going to happen in an instrument.
To point out, I don't rally, I don't do like Charlottesville activism. That's not what I'm talking about. The activism I do is
activism as
sending emails, arguing with people, going to universities, finding out who the actual evil anti-whites are, trying to get them fired, that kind of thing.
Yeah, but that's also it's also because you have a language. It's possible. But again, without the language in that, it's impossible. Because you can go to university, spend your time going like, help the whites. But if you don't have a solution or a language or an instrument, nothing comes from it. So it's a compliment to you, but I'm just pointing it out to the audience as well.
Well, maybe to sort of elaborate on this thread of conversation, my goal with all of this, like the what comes next or the what's the point of all this, the point of all of this isn't a particular governmental structure. It's not a particular end result of a ratio or a number of people on an ethnic, like, oh, well, once we get to 93%, blah, 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 it's going to be fine. Like that, I don't care about all that. What I care about is white people having a future where we're in control of our own countries, our own land, and we don't have to worry about all the things that are trying to tear us apart and destroy us right now. So that's my goal. And I think that if more people that cared about Western civilization would start doing what I do, we would eventually get to the point to where we are not threatened by the anti-whites that call themselves progressives, the anti-Westerners that call themselves A, B, C, D, or E. Once we have enough children, enough communities, enough people that are raised with the meme curative, the curative contagion to fight back against that stuff, then we're going to be in control of our own destiny.
But
Germans will make whatever Germany becomes. The British will make whatever Britain becomes.
Okay,
but
to criticize your approach a tiny bit, aren't you worried you're just giving your enemy ammunition?
No. I'm not worried about that at all, because I don't think I am.
But, again, the issue with Richard Spencer is the only thing he did that was he did nothing good. I was about to say, the only good thing he did, but he did nothing good. But the only thing he did...
I can't name a single great thing he's done.
Me neither. That's why I had to stop myself. I couldn't think of anything.
Yeah.
No, but what he did, he gave ammunition to the enemy with his rallies. Because they still, I mean, in the Trump debates with Biden and Trump, Biden still says, are you against white nationalists? Are you against tiki torch people? It's like, tiki torch, who the hell gives a damn? But that's what Spencer did, and those people. I understand they wanted to feel emotion, they wanted to feel some sort of unity, but he just created ammunition.
I am not scared of that because of the language I use, because of how I identify, and because of how I carry myself. It is foolish for anyone to ever take up the title white nationalist, racist, white supremacist, Nazi, neo-Nazi, any of that stuff. I eschew that. I have never cared about that identity anyway. A lot of people that are in the white positive sphere or care about white people, they have this romanticization of the Third Reich and Germany and all of that. That's never been me. I don't have that. So I've never had the neo-Nazi label to worry about anyway. So going forward, though, I encourage everyone, if you care about white people at all, you stop all that mess. That is what you're talking about, becoming the villain, stepping into the traps that our enemies want us to step into. Like, for example, I'm never going to go and be a part of an armed militia that makes a stand against the government. That is a 100% way to get yourself killed or thrown in jail forever. Like, don't do that stuff. Even if you have 1,000 trained men and you think you're going to go defeat the Zionists and you're going to shoot up a synagogue and you're going to make a big point, no. You're going to get killed, your family's going to be sad, and everything you own is going to be seized by the government. You ain't going to accomplish anything for the white race. You're just throwing your life away and wasting people's time and money. Don't do that shit. So me and my people, the no white guilt crowd, the white positive community that's not connected to Jason, patriotic alternative in the United Kingdom, we promote white positivity, not negativity against others. We eschew the whole white nationalist neo-Nazi stuff. We don't do the swastika thing. We don't talk about, oh, well, Hitler was right about blah, 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 blah. No, that is cancer. You bring that shit up, everybody normal is going to seal their ears, and everybody in government is going to pay attention to you with a magnifying glass. Yeah. And so we don't do any of that stuff. And a lot of us that are involved in ethno-nationalism now, we never cared about that stuff to begin with. Lord knows I didn't. I'm an American. I was raised to hate Nazis. You know, like, like a lot of people. So, like, I've never, despite the things that I think really are lies about the Holocaust, World War II narrative, I'm not a denier. I think that most of the stuff happens sort of the way that we've been told. But, of course, things have been embellished, and the victors of wars change things and that kind of shit. And, of course, you've got the certain lobby, which cannot be named, which always uses that as their original sin trump card for everything. So, clearly, we have a lot of sympathies, even if you're not of the neo-Nazi white nationalist people that were part of the white nationalist movement for years, which is a dead movement, by the way. Did you know that? The white nationalist movement as a movement has been dead for like 10 years or more. It is completely dead and gone. There is not one. So that's why when people say, oh, the white nationalists are the biggest threat, no, they don't even exist as a group in America anymore, and this was the only place they really had an actual organization anyway. The white nationalist movement that actually went by that and did white nationalist things, it's gone. It is gone. Ethnocentric nationalism that appeals to ethnocentric society building and ending wars and ending the resource struggles, breaking up the U.S.-Israel war hegemony, the whole planet. That's the things that we want. The people like me, the ones in Canada, we care about peace, and we care about what I like to jokingly call true diversity. We think countries should remain countries. We think people should remain people. We don't want the homogenization of this global zeitgeist to come brown us all and make us all have similar language and customs and all that. We think that is absolutely vile and inhuman. We want all the ethnicities of the world to grow and flourish naturally. And people naturally self-segregate and naturally create city-states and then governments. And so that's sort of the end of that thought train of why I'm not afraid and why I don't think I'm stepping into traps, is because, number one, I have the truth and science on my side with everything I talk about. Number three, I think that most people understand everything I'm talking about, even if they don't have the words to say it. And that's why the lexicon I learned from Jason, paired with my own language tools I've developed for the last 5 or 6 years, really makes me feel like I have power and truth, and I'm not scared of people who will try to label me as this or that, because I don't use the language of the boogeyman. They are going to call me the boogeyman, but if anybody listens to me talk or argues with me or looks into my past or looks into the things that I say and talk about, they're not going to see any of the boogeyman stuff, because I don't do it and I don't believe in it. So I don't preach it. So that's why I'm not afraid.
That I fully understand. Yeah, I like it. And again, I mean, when you said don't join the militia, it's like, yeah, it's gonna be like that, because that's the issue.
Because I think pretty much anyone that has at least a halfway decent grasp on the way that things work in the state that we're in, you take up arms against one of these states, we know what happens to you, and it's not good. You're not going to get your way, even if you and 1,000 men stomp your feet and with your little rifles and you make a stand. Like, do you know what a drone is? Like, do you know what a missile is? Like, even if they don't want to kill you, they're just going to terminate your bank accounts. They'll wait for you to go to bed. They'll raid you. They'll take your stuff. Or they'll have your cousin or your wife or your sister or your son rat on you, and they'll come and take all your equipment, and then you're done. And then you've accomplished nothing for your people or your country or whatever it was.
And you became a boogeyman.
Yeah, it's not going to end well for you, and it's completely stupid. So
I mean, this is the weird part about, like, Proud Boys, for example. They're not a militia group.
Right. They're just an activist group of Western chauvinists. That's all.
Yeah. But they've done enough. They've given enough ammunition to the enemy, even though the enemy creates spectral ammunition, fake ammunition. It's still ammunition.
I started learning about Enrique Ontario about a year ago, Tim Pool. And recently, that guy was on Tim Pool's stream, and he talked a lot about the origin of the Proud Boys. And most of the Proud Boys don't even do the activist stuff. They're more like a mix of Western chauvinists and machismo hotheads that like to just laugh and cut up together. It's kind of like a men's club.
It's
really.
A men's club. So, yes, Gavin.
Yeah,
Gavin created a men's club.
The fact that they're still called white nationalists, that is just the most absurd thing.
I mean, the funny thing is,
anyone who knows anything about the white nationalist movement, like these guys in the Proud Boys, they would have never been part of that.
No, now many of them have interracial relationships.
Yeah, and a lot of them aren't even white. Did you know that?
Yeah, I know.
40% of the Proud Boys aren't white. Like, it's a ton.
Those damn neo-Nazis. Another funny thing with the Proud Boys is Twitter recently had, like, they showed men kissing to, like, fight the Proud Boys, show them like that. It's like, all right, well, a few weeks after that, 2 Proud Boys married each other, like 2 men.
Yeah.
They're not.
And also,
they're not anti-LGBT. So again, it's funny how they create a boogeyman. The left, the Democratic Party creates boogeyman, but they're not real. Yeah. I mean, I know one reason why they do it, and it is to get that budget increase. Mm-hmm. So, and I'm not going to talk about the insights I know about the American government a bit, but they cheat a lot.
Well,
they use a lot of...
I don't know if you've heard this or not, friend, but the bureaucracy is expanding to meet the needs of the expanding bureaucracy.
Yes, 100%. There's a lot of fake neo-Nazi stories, a lot of fake attacks. Mm-hmm. And again, why? Well, budget increase. Always been that.
Another thing I'll say really, about
I don't
mean to talk over you. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I think we have like a 1 second delay, and it makes me talk over you. I'm very sorry. But another thing I'll say about neo-Nazi stuff and fighting the government and all that stuff. I've been in ethno-nationalist, white nationalist circles looking for these kind of people for a long time now, going back about 3 years, because I didn't believe the media narrative and the lies around them. And I have not met anyone in any of these groups that actively says you should use Nazi iconography, you should talk about Hitler, you should take up arms against the government, you should make a militia, you should go kill anybody. I have never met anyone that says that. And everyone that I have met and talked to in these circles says, if you hear anybody talking about that, they're a fed or a lunatic, and don't talk to them. Like, so That's
I mean,
why I don't think that white nationalism or neo-Nazis is a problem or a threat at all in Western countries. I think it's
neo-Nazis
completely
exist.
hogwash.
I mean, they exist, and I've spoken to some of them. But most of
And
them,
it was probably feds then, or
no, no, no,
crazy
no, no,
people.
no, 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 the real ones. But the real ones, they usually say they're part of a community. Either their parents were it, or their friends group were it, and then they became part of it that way. Most people, I mean, as they say to me, most people in America are not like nationalism per default. They don't go into it by default because, as you stated,
Yeah,
America is very anti-Nazi. Always
yeah.
has been.
It's in our video games. It's in our movies. Like
It's
people
in
are
your
raised
it's in
that
your
way.
overall culture as well because you
Yeah.
fought them,
Mm.
so it's all in it.
Which I wish it wasn't, but what are you going to do? That's how it
It
is.
is it is what it is. It's what it is. So when people state they are neo-Nazis, again, it's not because it's easy to become it. It's a community thing usually. Socialized into it through community. But yeah, but the funny thing is, a lot of the ones who wear Nazi flags to unite the right and the rest, either they're mentally ill, some of them are mentally ill, or they're there because they did made another crime, and it's a way to get less punishment. They do sort of operations for the feds, for example, showing a Nazi flag. The point is, they need to create these fake stories to get budget increases. It's kind of funny. So, I mean, when I was in your podcast last time, I mentioned how everything is sadly about bureaucracy in our society. Someone was angry, like, "No, that's not it." It's like, I'm sorry, but it genuinely is. No, but of course there's anti-white sentiment and the rest, yes,
Uh-huh.
but a lot of it happening just through bureaucracy itself. It's just
Oh, of course, yeah.
really
But
dumb
when you
reasons
hear
why.
me talk about anti-whiteism and anti-white sentiments or the anti-white narrative, almost 100% of the time, people who are carrying out that stuff, it's not because they're scheming merchants that say, "I want to hurt the white people."
Yes,
It's what has become.
yes,
And
exactly. It's what has become. Exactly.
right. And I think that that's why what I do will help, because I am unraveling what has become, person by person, church by church, community by community, and carrying that forward, I think is the best way to fight against that stuff. Because like I tell people, I've come across people before that have a warrior spirit like me, but they think that, going out with a bang and being a statistic, or, taking up arms. And I tell them every time, I sympathize with your valor and your desire to sacrifice yourself to make change. This is not how you make change. This is how you enforce the harm against us.
Yes,
Because
exactly.
you're giving credit to those government agencies that want to get that funding and want to self-sustain themselves. Because if you're part of the NSA, every militia idiot and every psychopath that shoots up a synagogue guarantees their job next year.
Yeah.
And that's why you don't want to do that. Like, it's all part of unraveling this ugly machine.
It's so sad that that's the truth. It's genuinely the truth.
I mean, it's sad, but it's the truth. And like I told you early in the conversation, I do my best to only speak the truth because the truth is powerful.
Yeah, and I mean, if you speak to the federal agents that know what the hell they're doing, sometimes they allow, it sounds weird, but they allow damage to be made so they have a reason to exist. They have a reason to exist. Obviously, they help a lot. That's not the point. But sometimes they allow the communists. Well, let's say 90s in Germany. They allowed them to go a bit further. They could have done a raid against them early on, just destroy them, and they would never be an issue. But if you allow them to do some things, then all of a sudden the narrative changes, and they get a budget increase. How people speak about it changes, and everything changes. Same thing about right extremists. Yeah, there were some early on that got through the radar, but now most in Europe, not Germany. Germany sucks. The most secret agents or military intelligent organizations in the West know about the right wingers by this point. They know who's going to commit the acts. So if you usually see acts happening, it's bullshit.
Yes.
I don't believe it at all.
And I think I think a big part of what you're talking about is how the media has sort of radicalized people to need the fear. And
Yes.
I think that's why the anti-Western global elite, like the World Economic Forum people, I think that's why they're capitalizing on the COVID pandemic, because they're like, hey, for the last 10 or 15 years, people in the West have been used to having this hot button thing to be angry or scared about over and over and over again because of media. And I think that that's why we've seen the pandemic manifest as lockdowns the way it has with all the fear mongering, is because, like we talked about, it might not even be on purpose. It's just the machine, like an AI, this the zeitgeist machine learns from behavior, and then that's what it chases to gobble.
Yeah.
And people have been conditioned to need that boogeyman, to need
Yes.
that fear. They need
So
that plague or that neo-Nazi or whatever to be scared of.
to give you an example why I don't trust media much anymore. It's not their fault. It's the zeitgeist boogeyman that go. So I don't blame them. They do what they have to do. But so
No, don't say they do what they have to do. No, they don't have to.
Okay, they don't
I still
have to.
hold people accountable, even if they're ignorant.
Fair enough. Fair enough. But someone I knew back in the day was arrested. He's a terrorist, but he's very anti-white. Like he's just like, yeah, let's nuke the world, and from the nuclear explosions, he's one of the worst people. But it's sort of
he just wants to see it all burn and destroy everything.
yes, and from the destruction you regrowth. It comes from Kali. It's a Hindu goddess that through destruction comes creation.
Yes, I'm familiar with that narrative, but I think that that's completely stupid.
Yes,
I don't like that.
but so he's that person, and he created terror. Well, they stopped him before he did, but he was trying to create terror acts, and again, completely anti-white. He doesn't give a shit about white people. All right, he's arrested. He's in jail. All right, what did the media write about him? White supremacist.
They did not a nihilist anarch, but a white supremacist.
A white supremacist.
Right.
Which
That's
is just
because they need that. They need warm bodies to put in that chair to point at and say, "Oh, look, this is what we make you scared of. See, here's a guy that we call that." Yeah.
even though it's completely the opposite.
Yeah.
So they create boogeyman. But again, as you said, it just goes. I mean, it is also simpler to explain that. Just state it as that instead of going into details of his satanic, nihilistic, chaotic worldview.
See, it is more simplistic, but I don't give a pass to anyone in the media that calls somebody these boogeyman terms when they know better, and they can spend 5 minutes to learn better and then call him what he really is.
Yep.
They don't get a pass. They are evil and guilty for that.
Yep, I agree. But sadly, that's just how things are. And we have to kind of, that's, one thing I do think it's good to stop, it's both within journalism and politics, is to stop the social climbing. Because the people, so there are different behaviors of people. Everyone, they will exist in any form. But I don't want the people who are social climbers, lie as social climbers, do anything to get up the ladder, to be within journalism or politics. Because
I think that's the problem with our structure, is because our journalism and all of our governments, the way that they have evolved over the last 100 years, they only self-select for those rotten people.
Exactly. Yeah. That has to change.
Mm-hmm.
So to become a journalist must be harder. But we give it more prestige, more. If you're a journalist, you're supposed to be like, wow, that should be like top of society. Should be. Mm-hmm. It's not today. Now it's all about.
Should be.
now it's all clickbaity shit. But it should be. But it should also become hard to become one, and they should be under a lot of they should always have a watchful eye on them, so they don't talk about bullshit. So that's why I'm not for 100% free press, as we call it. We are for truthful press.
Yes.
So it's not you can't state, oh, that man's rapist over there. Look at me, I'm a journalist. It's like, no, you just destroyed someone's life.
You don't want the press to have the ability to label anyone a rapist or a Nazi or an alien.
For example.
And then And then that makes it real, because
Yep.
if you have your society trained to believe in at least mostly believe in the truth of the press, and then in a short period of time the press gets subverted with liars and activists, that derails your entire society, and it's terrible.
Yep. We also have ideas of, yeah, politicians shouldn't be. If they're politicians, they should be politicians. But not social climbers. They're doing it for a reason. But also, if you become a politician or politically active, you should be removed from certain other aspects. So you shouldn't be allowed to be a lawyer and politically active. I have political activism in you.
I can understand that. I can understand that.
So there's a few things like those that I think will help. But I mean, again, I just want the personality of social climbers to be gone from those, at least politics.
Oh yeah,
Because
you know the guy
social climbers is not a thing within lawyers, for example. Because being a lawyer is hard. Social climbers are good social skills.
It requires competency.
Exactly. So I just want that it requires competency in politics and not politics, in lawmaking, policy
Yes.
making, and in journalism.
One of the things that I talked to that guy Kizza that you know the guy that has his radical ideas from Britain that we both disagree with a lot. One of the things I talked to him a lot about is how once we can have any measure of power over changing our society for the better, I think one of the things that we should do is change the way that both local and federally appointed people are appointed. Instead of having just, hey, everybody gets to go vote, you have to vet people. You have to say, oh, you want to be a politician that runs for this burg or this city or this community. Well, you have to take a course on this community's history and interests.
Yep. Well,
you have to pass it, and all of this stuff is only created by those people you plan to represent. And then you have to pass a competency course of, personality test, mental acuity, how devoted you are, and all of that. And then and only then are you allowed to even run. Like, that's just the bar for being able to want the position. And then after that, everyone has a competency test and has to be tested on that stuff every year or two to make sure they still represent the people that they're supposed to represent, and they're still competent to do it by the judgment of the people they represent. I think that would keep politics and media a lot more honest if we could somehow create that instead of the way that we have it now.
Yeah, so satanic Republicans doesn't become...
Yeah, so the satanic tranny doesn't accidentally become a conservative representative.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Gosh. Yeah, no, I fully
agree. That's a funny story. For people listening who don't know, that happened on the west coast of America. This transgender woman, just to make a point, openly declared herself a Satanist and transgender, and then ran for a Republican seat. And because no one paid attention and nobody cared, and it was a Republican voting area, she won the nomination. Just because people don't care and they go vote for no reason and just vote like they've always had. We have to change that. Like, in a society that I got to organize, democracy would be off the table. The only people who would get a vote in what's going on are people who also pass a competency test to prove they know what's going on and are invested in the body that they're voting in. Like, for example, you can't be an immigrant that has no stakes. You can't be a person who is a net negative to your area monetarily. Only one vote per landowner or per household, that kind of thing. Like, I think that kind of structuring around who has a say and who gets to run, I think would dramatically change the type of scumbag that our systems attract now.
Yeah, definitely. Reform of that sort is needed in a way. It's always going to be hard. The test is always going to be hard because who makes the test? So it's always it's always going to be a bit of a struggle. But yeah, I mean, there should be harsher voting requirements. Mm-hmm. Like immigrants shouldn't be allowed to vote, not until they have been here for, let's say, 10 years and they have paid taxes, meaning they become a positive.
One of the things I don't like about America is how so many people say voting is a right. Voting isn't a right. Like, if you're alone, naked on a desert island, you don't have the right to say what goes on in someone's government. No, that's not a right.
No, but it's a bullshit statement. But the point is, is that democracy is the pinnacle of human political intervention. So therefore, it's your right. Meaning, if you want to keep this more good system going, you need to vote. It's like, it's not though.
Of course it's not.
No, I mean,
You remember what I said earlier about wanting to reach the stars and evolve into another kind of human? Well, if anyone on Earth thinks that any structure or government or science we have now is the best that we're ever going to have, then they clearly haven't learned anything about history and human beings. We're always evolving and changing and creating better and different stuff.
Yes, but that's a lot of modern Hegelians, the ones who believe in end of history, with the synthesis of the world. They believe a liberal democracy is the end of history.
Well, you can go all the way back to the Enlightenment, and you have writers and philosophers talking about how we have achieved the ultimate state of blah, 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 blah. And then 50 years later, everything's different. Yep. It's like every single time. Yep. So I don't think that we are ever going to get to a point to where I'm going to think before I die, well, this is the best we're going to get. I guess we shouldn't try to change it anymore. So and that's another thing that makes me know that I am not going to step into the trap of people calling me a fascist or a neo-Nazi or whatever, is because I don't want any of the systems. I don't want anything that's come before, because it has all failed. It has all led to war, or it has all been consumed by bigger other structures that have led to war and death. I don't want any of them. I want something better. I want to look at how everything has failed. What was good about National Socialism? What was bad about fascism? What worked with early democracy? What works now with late stage democracy cancer? What's good and what's bad of what's come before now? Let's look at all of that and cherry pick for what works best for each country going forward, and see what better systems we can make. So when it comes to economics and government, that's my stance on what we should all do. But that's secondary to making sure our people don't become extinct.
I mean, the issue with that is you can't imagine it now. I mean, Marx, when he created his little communist idea, it was a utopic, idealistic, end of history concept. Did it happen? No. Will it happen? No. It's flawed. But what he saw at the time, he thought, all right, from this could come this. So therefore we should try to strive from that. The issue is that people who only have end of history in mind, they don't see everything that's happening, how everything is waving and moving forward. They only see, all right, end point.
Go ahead, sorry.
And they just go end point. No matter how culture, history, time goes, it's always end point. That's it. It's like, no, it's not. It's not a stationary target.
I don't trust anyone, whether a speaker or an author of old, who professes that they can accurately predict what humanity will be in the future. Because in my short life, in my 40 years, I have seen the world around me dramatically change in massive steps 3 times already.
This year.
Like, exactly, us being able to do this, we couldn't do this 10 years ago. And 20 years before that, nobody in the world would have thought this could exist. This is a smartphone.
This is magic, man. This is booga booga magic.
Yeah, exactly. And also, go back to when I was born, around 1980. You tell people about me and you doing this and carrying this, that was what they were doing on Star Trek.
Yeah.
Literally, that's what they did on Star Trek. And this is better than a tricorder from Star Trek in 1980.
Yeah.
And we have this in reality right now. So that's why
we can make them rather cheap.
Yeah, made on the cheap that almost everyone can have. So that's why I don't believe anyone that pretends to know, oh, well, if A, B, C, D, and E will happen, and this society does this, then eventually we will have this. Or that's also why I don't believe the ones that are negative, saying like, well, Yizz, the white race is already dead, and the globalists are going to win. And I'm like, no, you can't know that. No. And you can also always go back to the old if the situation was dire, or if the situation was hopeless, their propaganda wouldn't be necessary, that fun meme. Like, you can always go back to that too. But I also think that both the naysayers and the positive utopia people are wrong, because they can't predict what's going to be 5 or 10 years.
But I think the prediction that they make wrong. I had the same thing. I had a conversation with a friend 2 weeks ago, And we stated like, oh, what do you think is the problems? What's going to be the future problems? And he stated, well, I think property, right? Like, everybody can't have property. Property will be owned by like the rich of the richest. And which is like, yeah, sure, that can happen. But I told him, yeah, but that's if our system doesn't change. If we do it like the Romans did when they had too many people owned land, was too many monopolies of land, well, what did the state do in that case? Well, they take it from them. And not to say that it's going to happen again, but you need to understand systematic changes of grand scales, like in politics, can change at any time. So to think
and
that
also along with that, technological changes make a huge difference too.
Yeah.
So especially now that we have surveillance drones and smartphones, like these things are available for pennies on the dollar compared to what they would have valued at just 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So moving forward, your property is what you can protect, right? Yeah. Like one of the jokes that my friend Radical Liberation, he's got a cool channel. I don't know if you know him or not, but it's a pretty small channel. But one of the things he says is, well, since part of owning property is being able to defend it and not let anyone else claim it, I claim the moon. The moon is mine.
Well, no, of course not. Doesn't work. But yeah, that's so. But you're talking about ownership in toto. That's a proprietarian concept.
Yeah, of course. Property. Like I said, I like a lot of the proprietarian stuff I've read. Like
property is what you are willing to defend.
Yeah.
You can't.
But no, where I was going with that is we can't predict technological changes as well as government changes, and to say that, oh well, we're not going to own any property, that the rich are going to own everything. We don't know that. We don't know if, because who for all we know, 10 years from now there's going to be an AI explosion, and then money and commerce will become pointless because we're all going to have everything handed to us all the time, and then we end up fat batteries for the Matrix machine. We don't know what's going to happen. So to think that the situation is hopeless, or that there is always going to be the same kind of struggles culturally or whatever that we have now, I think is foolish. Yeah. I think it's foolish, and it denies the observable reality that's available.
I fully agree. Again,
okay.
End of history stuff is stupid. But yeah, I mean, so I had this conversation 2 days ago as well about why people think this way. It's usually young people. Their first life-ending or world-ending scenario is what they fight for. So today many fight for global warming because they think global warming will end humanity. You fight for more white people, the same thing. It's usually you worry that it's going to end. That's the point.
More specifically, I want the continuation of Western civilization, and I believe that is an outproduct of European people.
But it's also you have it in your mindset that if you don't, there's a risk that Western civilization will fail. It will end, meaning it's an end. But a friend said to me, it's like, yeah, that's true. All of those things are true in every way, shape, and form. But the more of an adult you become, the more you notice, oh, wait, there actually isn't just one end of the world scenario happening at now. It's multiple. You can't fight them all. It's just the world is filled with end scenarios constantly in human history. Plagues,
and
meteorites, solar flares.
We could be battling a world-ending disease and an asteroid hit at the same time.
Yeah. So all of those things are always looming. The end of humanity is looming at every second. But the older you get and the more you get used to it, you just go, because you can't fight them all. You choose a fight. You know, some people choose to make sure that no meteorites comes and destroys us.
If you'll let me speak just a moment about what we talked about earlier, about why I do what I do. Again, what we just talked about, nobody has the answers. I am not saying that I 100% know exactly what things will be like 10 years from now if I do nothing.
Yeah.
But I do know that if my worst fears for our people are true, 10 years from now, if I have done nothing, I will hate myself for not having done what I'm doing now. So I view what's going on as unquestionable fact about white people European people in European countries being replaced, and there being active mental agents in our schools, in our universities, that for some reason hate the societies they're part of and seek to destroy it for whatever reasons,
Yeah.
Marxism or intersectionality or whatever you want to call it. And I believe that if we do nothing to combat that at a cultural level, they are going to win, because they actively campaign, they are activists, they are allowed to speak in media, they are put forward by people that are rich, they are championed by corporations. And unless we take measures against that and try to fight them in the psychological war that we're in, I think that that does very likely spell our doom. So again, I'm not saying 100%, but I would say like 98%. Based upon what I believe is observable fact or whatever.
Yeah. And it's the battle you choose to fight, because you feel like that is the best.
I wish more people would willingly campaign against this stuff, because it's going to take a lot of us marching to a similar tune and speaking similar things to push back against this mind plague.
Yeah, and I'm not. It's good. I mean, I'm not complaining that you shouldn't do it. Go ahead, do it. But everybody always have to know there is not one answer, but there is still fights one can do. Like, because answers appears when action is made. So the more rallying come, then sort of an answer or an outcome will appear. But you have to do things for the outcome to happen.
Yes. I'd like to say 3 things about that. Okay. Number 1, I think that anyone who believes it's my way or the highway is probably too self-centered or egotistical to see that there could be multiple paths to working towards a similar goal. For example, I am not going to tell you that you are a complete and utter waste of a human unless you campaign an activist exactly the way that I want you to.
I'm a waste of human. Just kidding.
But you know, there are people, especially in the let's save the West clusters, they believe that it's my way or the highway. If you're not doing what I say, then you're an enemy of our people. Like, there are people like that out there. But I'm not like that. And I think that we can work on similar things while also working towards the same collective goal. Because I'm sure that you probably think Western civilization is a pretty good thing, right?
Of course.
Okay. And you don't want to see our people go extinct. You probably don't want to see any people, because that sucks, right? And so I just assume by default the things that you do with your life and your time would like to prevent both of those horrible things. So you are at least taking baby steps towards the things that I care about, even if you didn't know me. So, and I hope that with my words and my lexicon and the things that I hope are true that I share, I hope that inspires everyone to at least talk about and work towards the goals I want a little more, and then a little more, and then a little more. So that's the first thing. Number 2, you were talking about answers. And one of the things that I came up with that I don't know how profound it is, but I was proud of myself when I came up with it, was I'm not an academic. I don't come from an academic background. I'm autodidactic. I just love to learn stuff. And one of the things I started saying recently was, I don't have the answers, but I finally learned what questions to start asking. So I think that if we could all sort of take wisdom from that and realize ourselves are probably never going to have the absolute answers to the real big picture question. But if you learn to ask the right questions and start chiseling away at that problem, and enough people do it, then we can make real change. And that I was inspired to share that because of what you said about answers being emergent. Like, as people take action, the things that we should do emerge from that, and then we can find the answers. I think that's awesome. I believe that. And the third thing, I've completely forgotten.
No, it's fine.
I had a third thing I was going to share that happened to me recently or I talked about recently, but it's gone because I don't take my meds. So
don't worry about it. We should start wrapping it up. It's been 1.5 hours. But I
love this. We should do this again sometime and continue the conversation.
And plus, that was a good final speech. So it's like, ooh, that really wrapped everything up.
All right.
So I'm happy. But any last thing you want to say to the audience?
I
Anyone
want
listening?
you to not believe anything I say. I want you to go dig and find your own answers. I share things that I believe are true. I do my best to only speak the truth, but the way I know they're true is because of all the digging I've done. I want you to challenge everything I say. Go to the internet, go to your friends, go dig into your old history books, your encyclopedias you can find at your grandma's house. Dig for your own answers. Don't just believe what me or anyone else says. Do your own homework. Because yes, I love followers. Yes, I love friends that will come and chat with me and leave me YouTube comments. But more than anything, I want the truth to be important. So when you see me do a video or talk thing or an ethnocultural thing, challenge me on it by going and seeing if I'm wrong. Make sure that what I'm saying is based in reality. Do your own research. That's how I became who I am today, was because I was such a skeptic. I didn't believe anything. And for years, I dug for my own answers, and I kept digging and I kept digging. So I encourage everyone to do the same, because I believe you will find, if not the exact type of truth that I'm talking about, something close to it. So I guess that's my final little speech about things.
It's a beautiful little speech. Thank you, Jizz, for coming on. And it was a nice talk. Now we know a little bit more about you.
Yeah, of course.
And we could,
I would love to do more of these. This would be fun.
we could probably have talked for hours upon hours, but you gotta keep it concise.
Okay.
All right. Well, thank you, Jizz, for coming. I'm just gonna end the recording. So goodbye, everybody.
Bye.